How's it going, everyone? I'm Cesco with the CSU Entertainment Alliance, and today I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Brandon Mendez and Cabot McMullen, the production designers of Flamin Hot, which will be available on Disney Plus on June 9th. First of all, thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
For having us.
Great to be here.
Now, in case people don't know, this is the story of Richard Montañez, the creator of the Flamin Hot Cheeto. And for some people, this film may have come out of left field a bit. So I'm just curious, this is open for anybody. Why was this to you an important story to tell?
I can start with that one. I just feel it's a really good it's kind of about the American dream. It's about hustle, making mistakes, learning from your mistakes, never giving up. And you kind of taking those ideas and being innovative. And I think Richard does a good job of that. And it's a story that I felt like needed to be told. And
Yeah, it's really the classic underdog story, like Rocky. I mean, it's got all the great elements of all those great underdog stories. And the fact that it is sort of landing in the time that we're in right now and speaks to so many people who haven't had their story told. I think that's what really got us, excited about it. Not to mention it's a great opportunity for any designer because there's all kinds of great design opportunities within the story.
yeah, especially being able to do a period piece that focuses on, Chicanos and stuff like that. For me, it was really personal, so I felt like it was a good opportunity to dive in.
And going into that a bit, as I understand it, Brandon, you dug in through some of your dad's old photos to kind of get, to recreate some of these eras that you're jumping around through a couple different decades. So could you talk about some of the main key details that you were really proud of pulling off for this film?
Yeah, so that was true. I dug through a lot of personal photos when doing the initial research for this project, especially getting into Richard and Judy's house and Bacho's house. I found myself going back to my dad's photos as a kind of a way for me to compare, and I'd look and see kind of where we were landing with textures and colors and patterns, and being able to see my dad dressed like a Chicano in like the 70s, and being able to kind of portray that on film was really special to me. So yes, we're going in and really I feel like we did a good job putting that on screen.
Yeah, did your dad have the hair as well? The hair back then, that big?
He did. He had the hair. He would wear a little bandana sometimes.
Yeah,
He had like some flare bootcut jeans.
I love it.
So yeah, it was really funny to see that.
How about yourself, Cabot? What were some of the main details like that you going into this project you wanted to really nail?
Well, I just love the whole, the fact that this one guy basically saved Frito Lay, who was in dire straits in the early 80s. Their products weren't selling. Richard just made them aware of this whole new market that they hadn't engaged yet. I was brought in, I think, primarily to kind of help with all the sort of Frito Lay, factory stuff. For me, all the stuff that was going on in that factory was just fascinating. The way they could listen to the machines and hear, they were like machine whispers. And as Brandon mentioned, this was a period film. It spanned 3 decades. So we not only had to tell the story of the product through the ages, but just sort of the evolution of the products, and that became kind of the springboard for the Flamin' Hot Cheeto, because that was a whole new product that had to be launched, and it was launched for the first time from the factory floor that we were building, as a set.
Mm. There was something really jarring about seeing like the vintage bag of Cheetos, like what that looked like. Same with the Doritos, like that stuff was just like super interesting to see like how far it's progressed now. Just real quick, is there in your contract, is there like a free hot Cheetos clause for life type thing? Did you guys get that in?
Yeah. All you can eat.
All you can eat. Every gas station across the nation, you're walking rent free. I love it.
That's it.
But I like how you're thinking. That's a good clause to put in there.
Red fingers for life.
Yeah.
This is director Eva Longoria's first film. From your perspective, why was she the perfect director for this film?
I think it was also a story that she could relate to, and you could tell that she was so passionate about this. Working with her was one of the best experiences of my life, especially as a designer. And she's so collaborative, and she put it on her back, I feel like, this whole project, and she really wanted people to understand who Richard was, not just for who he is and what he did, but also for other people who don't have their story told. Even where she started to where she is now, it's a very relatable story to her. It's a relatable story to many. And I just think she had such a touching perspective on this film. So I think she was perfect for it. And it just kind of resonated with all of us. Like, she was so behind it that we all kind of gathered as a team. And, you know, I couldn't have imagined this being done by anyone else.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I've never worked with a director who is as passionate and as committed as Eva and as prepared. I mean, you know, a lot of directors are prepared, but she really came in with the full vision in her head and was able to communicate it to everybody. And in addition to that, you know, she was so engaged with the community that we were telling the story about that she started giving us like context, like, oh, we need a mural for, you know, the scene by the grocery. And so she set us up with, what were the names, Brandon? It was this.
David Figueroa, who helped us kind of bring in these mural artists to create this Chicano mural that we thought would be so special. You know, takes place in the communities that you kind of see when you go through Highland Park, or you even go into, you know, East LA. And we kind of really were able to bring that in. And she's so connected that we were able to speak with actual mural artists from, you know, from LA and work together to create this piece. All the little nuances she was really able to hit on.
Speaking on how, you know, she had a whole vision, I was reading about how she had mentioned to you guys a rule revolving around like the use of the color red, I think. I was wondering if you guys could talk about that rule a bit, what went into that decision, you know, what were some of the challenges you faced as a result of that?
Yeah, we had a lot of meetings leading up to the shooting of the film, and it all kind of came to a point where we had to make the presentation to Searchlight to tell them the visual story of what we were going to actually do. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, but I think the strategy at that point was not to show the color red until the Cheetos came off the line.
Correct. Yeah,
And
the first time we see that red is when the Cheeto comes off the line, or when they're starting to create it, you know, that's when we start to incorporate the red.
Yeah. There were little hits of red, you know, because in the community, of course, red is a vibrant color that is embraced, and also the Frito Lay branding has red in it, but we tried to downplay it as much as possible. So when that moment hit the screen, everybody's like, oh, here we go.
And I think, touching on what Cabot mentioned too, is the way we did our color story, you know, was very warm outside of the factory, and we brought in these cooler tones when we got into the factory. So as the film transitions, and as you see it, the pacing's pretty quick in this film. So you're constantly going back and forth between factory and his actual life, right? So we were able to like really get these colors. And when the red popped in this cool factory, like the color story, it was interesting too. And it almost is like, I remember we were talking about this. It's almost like he brought in like his flavor into this factory, where like you got these warm tones through the film, where he lived, where his dad lived, in the neighborhoods themselves, cooler tones in the factory. And then when the red came, it was like, that's Richard, like that's a part of him, that's a part of the community. And the red really like came to life inside there, which was really fun, to be honest. It was cool.
Yeah, Eva had the concept, but then we worked very closely with Federico Cantini, who's our DP, our cinematographer, and he had very specific ideas about lighting and color temperatures and lighting. We really wanted it to be clear visually that when you're in the 70s, you know where you are. When you're in the 80s, you know where you are. You know, the color story was very specific. But also, as Brandon said, in the factory, we picked lighting instruments or fixtures that were, everything was very cool, you know, metallics, grays, concrete, a lot of OSHA colors like warning stripes and OSHA yellow and oranges. And then, yeah, in all the houses, we used incandescent lighting, which was very kind of warm and inviting and soothing. But in the factory, we even put together some lamps in the ceilings that were reminiscent of the movie Skyfall. And so every time we put these lamps up and we'd see them in a shot, everybody goes, Skyfall.
Not a bad film at all to, you know, to pay homage to reference, you know.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Frito Lay factories, it was really cool. I thought it was really cool getting like an inside look of what like was that like a 1-to-1? Would that be what it would look like back in Rancho Cucamonga in that factory at the time? Like, what did you use as a reference?
It was definitely a version of it. You know, what we ended up doing is we found a decommissioned newspaper plant in Albuquerque, It was a whole campus. I mean, it was a phenomenal place for us because it became almost like a back lot because we were able to do so much of the movie there. But the industrial space where we shot the factory was a former newspaper plant. So it had all this mechanical conveyor systems and a lot of industrial things that, vertical pipes, horizontal piping.
The levels that it carried with us as well.
Yeah.
The minute we saw it, we knew it was it. We were striking out on finding a location that could help us. We were obviously with some restrictions trying to make this movie work, and getting into this factory. The minute we saw it, we're like, this is it. This is where we're going to build our factory within the Albuquerque Journal. We did a good job of integrating our machinery within their machinery. And I felt as watching the film, it was very seamless. It's very hard to tell what is where. What did we build? What was already existing?
But it's an interesting question because, industrial espionage is a big thing. And there are countries who will remain nameless right now who have ripped Frito Lay off in their whole process. And so there's really very little research, accurate research that you can pull from. We just started digging, and I think I stumbled on a YouTube that was made by a 6th grader who went on a Frito Lay tour of Rancho Cucamonga, and she did it as a student project. And so they let her shoot everywhere. And so we stumbled on this thing, and we're looking at it, and we're like, oh my God, there it is. And there's that is. And so then we just started putting all the parts together. We built a 3D model in SketchUp that then went into Vectorworks and prevised the entire thing as a virtual set first, which we then shared with the VFX guys who had to add a lot of the post effects of, product coming off the line and things of that nature. So I forget who it was, Brandon, but we talked to one expert. I think he was in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Who was the mechanical engineer who serviced a lot of these plants and set up a lot of these systems. He would give it to us, the info to us in broad strokes, but couldn't get too specific or he would get in trouble. It's like they all signed NDAs, all these guys. And when they left Frito Lay, they weren't allowed to talk about it. It was really kind of crazy.
We couldn't buy, that was another thing too. We couldn't buy machinery because of the dates and when it was created. They didn't use the modern technology that they do now. There was a long process of figuring out what was right for the period compared to what would be right now. Because what they use now wouldn't work for our story.
Speaking of contracts, that little 6th grader deserve all the free hot Cheetos as well.
For
Nationwide.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, get her 5% of the ticket sales, all that stuff. So I want to shift gears a little bit. Cabot, you came up in the world of stage production, doing on and off Broadway shows. I'm curious, how are the challenges of designing for a stage play different from that for a movie?
Well, in this case, there were some similarities. The producers contacted me because they couldn't figure out how to crack this factory situation. And so what I proposed to them was a unit, basically like a unit set, like you might find in theater, which is what you do in theater because you're working in a very finite space. Things come in to stage a scene and then they go out and something else comes in or something flies out and goes into storage and comes back down. So we approached the factory set somewhat like a theatrical set in that we use the envelope of the Albuquerque Journal building as our backdrop, but then we built this unit set, this theatrical set in the center of it. And depending on which way the set pieces were turned, you could get different perspectives and different angles. So in a wide shot, it looked very similar to the real factory. But once you got in there and you were close into it, we had the ability to push things around. In fact, we did have a couple scene changes throughout the couple weeks that we shot in there. We had to reset conveyor lines so the cameras could move through and get shots. And then we put them all back together so we could get the wide overhead shot of everything moving all at once. So yeah, there were definitely some similarities between theatrical stage design and at least that set. But theater's different in that you have a proscenium and everything is seen through a very controlled aperture, whereas in film, you're very often looking 360, you're all over the place. And we had to be prepared for that. Our that set in particular, most of the sets really were all 360 sets. You could look in any direction, so we weren't really that limited.
Yeah, Brandon, for you, similar question, since you've worked on a lot of music videos for artists that, I mean, like spanning the gamut. Like, if you're watching this, you know who they are. Kendrick Lamar, Billie Eilish, Lana Del Rey. You worked on Beyonce's Black is King. Similar question, like what's different about designing for music videos versus feature films?
I think with feature films, we get to tell the story. It gets lost sometimes in music videos or commercials. You don't have that opportunity. It leaves you a little more fulfilling. You're getting in, you're being able to kind of tell this story of this person and multiple stories and multiple lines. And sometimes when you get into music videos, you're not able to do that. But I will say that, we were talking briefly about this prior to this. Music videos is kind of like a masterclass of getting to learn to make films and getting to learn to build and have these opportunities to get better. And every time I would do a video, I'm like constantly learning, getting better, learning from mistakes. So I think when I got to do this film, it was, kind of took like a lot of knowledge that I've been developing over the years and was able to put it forth in making a film. So,
Also, I
Yeah.
think, because when I went from theater into film, I was doing commercial work and music videos, then I got into more scripted narrative stuff. But the thing about, the short form version is that you learn to work really quickly and think really quickly and trust your instincts. And we had, what was it, 120-page script that had to be shot in 25 days. Sometimes we had in the factory, I think Fetty had like 90 setups. I mean, it was remarkable, what everybody was able to pull off in this project.
100+ sets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you don't deliberate, you do the best work you can. You don't, second guess it, and you just go for it. It's kind of like a training ground. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It was funny, Kevin, talking about that is you do get in a quick pace when you're doing short format or videos, commercials. And I remember at one point we're in prep and everything's happening and it's happening fast. And I'm going and thinking to myself, I'm like, this is much faster than you would anticipate when you're, a lot of times with narrative work, you expect this like slow process of figuring it out. It was very quick with the time that we had to get this project done, the amount of sets we had to do. So there was that. You're like, I'm used to this. I can do this. Like I'm used to just being a machine and just getting in and getting everything done. And that's something that does come from short form is you're like Cabot said, you're just constantly chipping away at every little thing. And with the amount of sets we had with the time, we found ourselves doing that every day.
Well, and you also have to be very flexible and adjust quickly to, reality, because with all I don't know, what's the saying that boxers use when you go into the ring, you have a plan until you get hit.
To get punched in the face for the first
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
It's sort of the same way in filmmaking. You have to be very inventive and be able to pull a lot of things out of a bag of tricks to solve the problem of the moment. We were shooting in Albuquerque during monsoon season. And very often in the afternoon, we get a massive thunderstorm. And with that comes lightning. And with that, comes safety issues. So our schedule started to get affected and we had to, be very flexible about how we could shoot the show. So a lot of unexpected things come up like that. You just got to roll with it and figure it out.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that must have looked like. Coming back to one of my favorite sequences in the movie, and just like a profound moment, I think it's like the moment that the movie's built on is, when Richard's in the park and you see the moment that he finds his purpose, in the form of like elote corn. And you're like, okay, yeah, this is the moneymaker right here. Just kind of going back to your careers, like what was that moment for you guys where you're like, yeah, this is the moment that drove me to becoming a production designer? Maybe it's a series of moments.
You want to take that, Cabot?
I've never thought of it that way. Connecting my career to the eureka moment of elote. But no, I get the analogy. It's a cool one.
Thank you.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I started doing theatrical sets in high school, as part of a theater troupe. I had a college counselor who, even though that's where my passion was and I was actually good at it, didn't even think to recommend it as a career. So I ended up going off studying architecture in college. And it wasn't until I got to New York and I shared a loft with a bunch of actors because I needed a cheap place to live, said, "Hey, you can design stuff, right? We need a set for our show. Why don't you help us out?" It was very organic and I just kind of fell into it. But that was my aha moment, you know. I just sort of realized, oh, this is where I really belong. And so I quit my day job and I started driving limos at night and doing theatrical sets during the day. That was sort of the beginning of it for me. You know, I just made the commitment and went with it. You know, if you're picking up signals and you see the signs and you feel like it's what your path is supposed to be, I guess you just kind of seize it, you know?
Right. Yeah. How about yourself, Brandon?
You know, I majored in product development, ended up moving down to LA. I was a writer's assistant at Bradley Bell Studio. And I had a lot of friends who were in music videos, like Rob Wick, Colin Tilley, directed some of the biggest videos. And, I saw opportunities to get in to start to do design. My buddy Rob was like, "Oh, dude, I think you'd be really good at this. You should start doing this." And so I started taking some jobs on, and I fell in love with it. And I remember there was a video I did for Chris Brown and Ariana Grande. And it was the first time I got to do, it was a decent set build. And we built this dungeon and was building this big, hillside with green screen. And I'm building this balcony with swooping archways. And you kind of question yourself, oh, I don't know if can I get here? Can I do this? I remember the first time seeing it, being there on set and like, oh my God, we created this from the ground up, from the drawings to now it's here in front of me. And, I think from there, I fell in love with it and I just kept doing it. And now we're 12 years later and I'm still doing it. So
Still doing it.
I think that was the moment of being on set and someone like coming up and like, man, you did such a good job. And you're always kind of questioning, am I doing a good job? Am I getting there? And I think that was it for me. And I kind of took that from there and I fell in love with this production design world. And now here we are.
A reoccurring kind of sequence of events is Richard operating in spaces where, he's the only brown person or he's in the minority. I was wondering, how have your personal experiences been with that, especially working in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, I feel like we're beginning to do a better job of representing ourselves in front of camera and behind camera. There was a good article that John Leguizamo recently posted on his Instagram, and it was similar about we have to deal with tough moments. Sometimes it's not laid out for you. I've been lucky enough to be surrounded with people who have supported me. Searchlight gave me an amazing opportunity. They trusted me to come in here and do this. So grateful for that. Rodrigo Garcia gave me a big opportunity, who is a filmmaker himself. We did 4 Good Days together. He surrounds himself with a very strong Latin crew, and then coming from videos, we tend to be pretty diverse in music videos. There are times where maybe we don't get the recognition and, don't get the support we're supposed to. You hear about it and then you don't really think it's there. And then you'll get that. You'll experience it at some point. I think it can get a little difficult, but I feel like we're doing a better job now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I got one more question for you guys. If you could go back and have a conversation with yourself when you're just starting out in the entertainment industry, what is the thing that you would tell yourself?
Just keep grinding. No matter who you are, where you come from, nobody's going to give you anything in this industry. I didn't have any connections coming in. I just, like I said, I sort of came about a little bit accidentally, but once I got there, it just had to keep grinding. It's some directors will tell you we're the first ones in and the last ones to leave. They call us the Clydesdales of the business because we're pulling a very big load, and we're responsible for about 5 to 7% of the budget usually. So in addition to the design responsibilities we're also managing 50 to 60 people and managing millions of dollars. And that comes with a lot of oversight and responsibility. And so I think if I could see myself in my 20s again, I would just say, believe in yourself. You can do this and just keep grinding.
Sure.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably be the same, just you got to keep at it. You got to keep working at it. I'd probably tell myself patience. I think sometimes we forget that it's a long journey to get to where you want to get to. And I think sometimes you get lost in like the quickness of this business and how fast it goes. And next thing you know, how you see people on set and you're like, what did we do together? Oh man, it was, how long ago was that? It was 2 years ago. I haven't seen you in 2 years, but it feels like you just saw them a week ago. And I think that's just shows you how quick this business moves. So I feel like, yes, you gotta keep working, you gotta keep getting better at what you're doing. But I would tell myself for sure, patience, just have patience and keep at it, and everything will work itself out how it should.
Yeah, yeah. Just keep working because you're going to be in Cabot's case. You're going to be working on thousands of television shows, Broadway off Broadway plays. In Brandon's case, you're going to be working with Kendrick Lamar, Beyonce. Like, just keep going at it. It'll get better. Like, it'll work out. It'll work out. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Thank you for sharing so much insight into the film. And again, yeah, Disney Plus June 9th, Flamin' Hot. Any last couple of things you wanted to say before we get off?
Just thankful to be here and to be associated with such a inspirational story, and to have helped Eva brought her, passion for this film to life. It was a real honor, really was.
Thank you for having me, and it was an honor to be part of the film as well.